Hi, so here we're going to do a centerpiece, and it's a tabletop centerpiece, so it'll be a nice round flowing over centerpiece that you can have on your dining room table for Christmas, for their holiday season. And so we're going to start, I'm going to explain a little bit about the floral foam. Floral foam or oasis, called two different things, same thing. It is a wet foam. When you take it home, it's going to be pre-cut, ready for the size of container that you're going to be using. And all you have to do to get moisture into it is have a bowl of water, set your floral foam on top of there. It will float, and it will gradually go down to the bottom and submerge. Once it's underneath the water, then you're good to use it. Don't press the foam into the water, even though it's very tempting to press it in. Let gravity take it down. If you press it in, what happens is you're going to have moisture on the outside of your foam, but it'll be dry on the inside. And if that happens, when you stick your greens in, it's just going to be into that dry foam, and you won't have any moisture that the greens can pick up. So my foam is already pre-wet. So I press it in there. I like to have it a little bit above the container rather than too far in. If it doesn't go in properly, don't squish it in. Rather, take a little knife and just trim a little bit off, just to make sure that it fits in there. By pressing it in, you're hardening up that foam, which is not good for the greens. So just let it sit naturally. It's nice and firm in there. And we're going to start by doing the fir. Fir is one that we use a lot of, and the red cedar and the white pine. White pine is really pretty, long needles, very well for an accent. So with the silver fir today, what we like to do is we trim it so that you're using the max amount of your greens as possible. When trimming, I will line it up and decide on how big your container is going to be. For this container, the size of it, go about 2 inches bigger than what the container is, and your height will be the height of your pot above it, so about that high. So you've got this nice round shape. I lay my green on top of here just so I can gauge on where I want to cut it, so that I'm using the max amount of my green and not having a lot of waste. So I've decided I'm going to trim it there. If it's a green that has been laying beside for a while, do make sure you give it a little extra trim, just to make sure that that green is open at the bottom, so it's not sealed again, because it will seal up fairly quickly, and that will help the plant to take up moisture. So now pressing it in by about 1/2 inch into the foam, you're going to go around all 4 sides of your container. When you're pressing these into your container, do make sure that if you have to pull them out because it's too long or it's not, quite right, make sure you press it back into the same hole rather than another hole, because what happens is the more holes you have, the more chance that your floral foam is just going to break apart. So when you press it back into the same hole, make sure that you press it just a little bit further so that it actually touches the foam. If it doesn't, that green will not drink any moisture and it'll dry up very quickly. So I did all 4 sides of the container. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece, I'm going to decide on my height. So my height is going to be about there. I trim my green and you press it in to the top. Doesn't have to be straight up and down. If it is, that's okay. I put about 3 pieces so you're getting that nice crisscross center in there. So now I have my center, the height is there, the center is done. Now I'm going to fill in around these edges. When you do that middle area between your center and your outside edge, make sure that your greens are a little bit shorter than these guys here, because you don't want your greens to be longer. Then you start covering those ones at the base. So a little bit shorter, maybe about a 45-degree angle. and go around maybe 4 or 5 pieces. Doesn't have to be on top of one another, like side by side like this. About an inch apart is perfect because you have to leave room for your other greens. You're going to be adding some cedar and some pine to this. So you can kind of see now the size of your container, it's what it's going to be, the size of your centerpiece, the height of your centerpiece. Now you have your basic layout of your centerpiece that we're working on. When we do our cedar, we're just going to follow that same pattern, just in between the fir. You're going to go in between with some cedar along the edges. You're going to do your center, and then you're going to do in between on that halfway mark. Now we're going to add in the cedar. We're going to follow that same routine that we did with the fir. And you're going to come and you're going to just maybe a little bit, you can have it a little bit cascading over, which is really pretty. But just make sure that it's not much longer than your fir. You want to have it a little bit cascading over, but you also still want to see that fir. And trimming your greens, giving that fresh cut. So I added a lot into the top. I could still see the floral foam, which is very good. That's an important thing so that you do have room for your decor later. So just adding those greens in. Take a bit of those bottom leaves off if you find that there's not, you don't have a nice piece to stick into the foam. You can kind of come underneath a little bit so that some of it flows over. Then I like to just turn it and see, oh, you know what? I need a little bit there. There's an empty spot there. So I'm just going to add in. And just taking a look and seeing if everything looks good all the way around. And it looks perfect. So now I'm ready to add the pine into it. So the pine, it's a nice long needled pine. And here too, just follow those same steps of along the outside edge. These ones, you can have them cascading a little bit over. Like here, so that you could see them a little bit cascading. Try not to cut these too terribly long, that they're not sticking out too far like this. It's better if they're a little bit shorter than what you think, and then just pressing it in so you still see the pine, but it's not sitting way out separate from the arrangement. Find a nice piece for your top area, like that, and just work your way around. You don't have to use as much pine as you did with fir and cedar. With pine, it's just a nice accent that you can add in there. With pine, when it comes to cutting it, I like to, say for instance, this was a bigger, let's grab this one, it's a little bit bigger of a piece. I want to cut this into 2 pieces. Don't cut it just like this, because you'll just have, this last piece will be a nice a chopped piece, and it wouldn't look that nice. So with this, what I do is I pull my needles back a little bit and just trim that stem so that you still have 2 viable pieces out of it. That's a really important step in cutting the pine. So you can use every piece that you possibly can. So you can see I'm always turning it, take a few of the needles off the greens. Making sure you have a little bit of pine in all sections. I have a nice pine sitting up here. Maybe I'll do one on this side. And one more. So you can see how I'm getting in between, just cutting the stem so I can use the rest of that green. If not on this arrangement, on another one. I'm going to tuck this in there. And I believe I am all done. So you can see it's a nice round shaped centerpiece. Erna's gonna come in here and she's gonna decorate it next. And you have a nice centerpiece for your tabletop. You'll see some pictures later on of some different styles of centerpieces, some low, long centerpieces. Same steps, just you have to think you want it long and narrow, if you're using it on a table. You can also do a one-sided, is what we call it, where you have your container up against in a corner or up against the wall or anything like that. The steps are basically the same. You're going to have this front flowing like this, but instead of the back being flowing outwards, you're going to bring your greens up. Let me just get a nice piece here for you. You're going to bring your greens up this way. So on the back part of the foam, you're going to bring a tall one in there. And you're just going to create a nice, almost like a little bit of a wall. And it's a fanned, so you're having a tall one, maybe one a little bit shorter. But the front basically is the same. Like I could take this one and change it into a one-sided very quickly. I would just remove a little bit of the greens from the back and rather press them in this way. So that is how you can change up a centerpiece style in an instant, basically. So now to take care of this, once it's decorated, you have it at home, it's sitting on your table. There is the floral foam that I said is in there. There is a liner in most of our containers. What I usually tell people to do is press your finger into the container, because there's room there. If you feel water, you're good. You don't have to add any water. If you don't feel any water, go to the sink, add a little bit. I would take it with you to the sink so you're not spilling water on your table or anything. Add a little bit of water, have your finger in there. If you feel the water, that's good enough. So it would basically be about, if you have water about halfway in your container, you are perfect. You can also add a water mist on it about every 3 days. And do check your water. Drier places, your water will evaporate or your foam will dry up faster. And you don't want your foam to dry up. So that is very important. And the lifetime of your greens, you're going to get about 6 to 8 weeks out of your greens if it's well watered and if you add a spray to it, keeping it as fresh as possible.
So the centerpiece workshop that we're doing today includes a little bucket, and there's actually a number of other choices, but I'll show those to you a little bit later. But we find this a very good size to teach you with, to start with. This one is sort of a tan with a little bit of a bronze look through it, and of course some whiter trees. So we're going to try to pull those colors in through the top as well. To start with, I have some stems that I'm going to put through the center. I've already wired a bunch of them together to a pick so that they can easily slip in through the center, right down through the oasis. And that is usually my start. The other thing I should show you is that the berries that you're going to get are going to come on a bigger stem, but they can very easily be pulled off the stem like this, just pull straight down, or use a wire cutter to cut them where you want. I've already pre-cut my berries, so they're all ready to go. Some of them I've wired onto a little bit of a pick as well, and you'll get some picks with you so that you can do that as well. There really is no rhyme or reason of how to put them in. You just want to make it look as natural as possible. So you can go very symmetrical and go all the way around. Normally I try to place some towards the bottom, some through the middle, so that it's just within the greens. And some I'm placed right through to the center on that. I also have some pine cones that we're going to add to this particular centerpiece, but I'm going to show you how to actually attach a pine cone when it comes without a stick. You can sometimes buy them with a stick attached, but many of ours don't have that sort of attachment. So we take a pick of any kind. Actually, I'm going to use a piece of wire first, and you wrap it around the bottom part of your pine cone. There's so many layers to a pine cone. You can easily slip a wire in through a layer, twist it tight, and then put the wire of your pick onto it, twist that together, and now twist it around your pick. And that way it's very secure, and you can actually even pull the pick right through the center, and then you can attach it this way. So here too, I usually try to ground my pine cones next to my berries, or I like to put them there because it makes them look grounded. In this case, I'm going to add 3 pine cones. And the last thing that I will add is a bird. Birds are awesome in a centerpiece. They add so much interest. There's so much of a natural look to them. And this one is going to go very well with the rest of your, the decoration that's in here. It does have a clip, so it can be clipped right onto the greens, or it can be wired with a pick like we've done everything else. And I usually would add a bit of a bow to this kind of a centerpiece. So, but this time I've just wired on a few pieces of ribbon, and they're right here. So if I was making this for you at home, or if you're making it at home, I would suggest that you actually do another one on the other side. But I just prepared one, and so that'll be fine this time. But I do want to show you what some of our other styles of centerpieces are. I'll start with this one. We added 2 candles, and it has a longer silver container. So because the container is that color, we went with everything silver in here. Decorated this yesterday. This is a great dining room piece. The kit that you normally get, the starter kit, would not include all of this. There'd be a $15 add-on for that. There's a secondary component to it, but otherwise you would get all of this. So that is an oblong or a rectangular dining room piece. This one has a little bit of a back to it, so that if you have a spot on your hall table or on your dining room set somewhere where you need to push it up against a wall, you only need to see one side, then you maybe want something like this. You want to create this. I did this one in a dull gold, so I put some of that same gold through here, but added some red berries just for pizzazz. The other option for you when you're doing a centerpiece is one that is a little more rustic. Comes in a wooden box, has some great sparkly wooden leaves in here, red berries again, and it's just some birch twigs. You could use dogwood twigs, you could use anything you have in your yard. So the twigs wouldn't come with your kit, but the rest of everything